Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday edition of Fair Territory, the live edition. I'm Ken Rosenthal here with Alanna Rizzo. Alanna, good to be with you. I was expecting a little bit more action this week. It hasn't been totally quiet, but coming off the winter meetings, I thought the fun would continue. We have had some things happen, however.
Yeah, there has been some stuff that's gone on. Ken, always great to be with you as well. And I guess the biggest story right now in our great game is where is Nolan Arenado going to be playing in 2025? What more can you tell us?
Well, the news came out yesterday that he blocked a trade to the Houston Astros, but blocked it only for now. This is not over by any stretch of the imagination. You see the tweet from the Athletics' Katie Woo. She says he's unwilling to waive his no trade clause to join the Astros, at least for now, and the conversations between the Cardinals and Astros will continue. What this is a player with a no trade clause effectively determining where he can go next. And that is the power that Nolan Arenado has in this situation, the leverage that he has in this situation. Quite clearly, he is not willing to go to the Astros just yet. And as Katie Woo wrote this morning in The Athletic, he wants that third base market to shake out a little bit. Specifically, he wants to know where Bregman's going. So at that point, maybe other teams would be interested in him. Maybe other opportunities would arise and he would be more comfortable going somewhere else. Or maybe it ends up being Houston. Now, all the parties involved here have a degree of leverage. The Cardinals have leverage too. Arenado wants to go. He wants to be traded. And ultimately, while the Cardinals need to trade him, they want to get their payroll down. And this trade, if it had gone through, would have been a financial bonanza for them. They would have only owed $15 million of the $64 million he is due. Well, okay, but the Cardinals can simply say also, Nolan, we can keep you. We don't have to trade you. And if we don't get to the right spot with a team or anywhere else, it's not going to happen. So Arenado is going to have to deal with that too, because ultimately he doesn't want to stay. And the Cardinals don't want him to stay. But it's got to be the right place at the right time. And then a team like the Astros, they don't necessarily have leverage here because obviously all of it is dependent on Arenado's wishes, but they can back out. They can say, okay, we are not a landing spot anymore, Nolan, and go find your place. So there is all of this going on with this particular situation. It's very interesting, but the key thing to remember is a player who is awarded a no-trade clause or earns a no-trade protection by virtue of his service time, that player has a lot of power. And as I said, Arenado can effectively determine where he ends up.
Well, you look at the equation, Ken, when Arenado is on one side of it and the St. Louis Cardinals are on the other side, both of those sides have leverage to a certain extent. And obviously, Arenado left Colorado because he wanted to win. And I'm imagining he's looking at the Astros situation, who have already lost Kyle Tucker, obviously. If they lose Alex Bregman as well, there's probably less of a chance that the Houston Astros are in a position to compete to get to the postseason. How much of that is a factor, in your opinion, of where Arenado goes, just based on whether it's going to be a pretender or a contender as far as the 2025 season is concerned?
Alanna, knowing Arenado as we both do, why did he leave Colorado? He left Colorado because he wanted to join a winner. Yes. Now, the Cardinals are shifting direction. They're resetting. He understands that. That's why he wants to be traded. So if he perceives Houston as not as strong as perhaps another team that might want to acquire him. Say it's the Yankees, say it's the Red Sox, say it's some other club entirely. Well, he's going to want to wait. And that's why this situation has developed the way it has. Now, if none of those other landing spots become available to him, at that point, okay, maybe Houston is the spot. And yes, the Astros can pivot and move away and find some other third baseman, but you know what? There aren't many out there. So the other option for the Astros would be to play Isaac Paredes at third and go sign one of the first basemen. There are a number of first basemen out there. That is something they can do. Maybe they sign Paul Goldschmidt, lives in Houston. They can do a number of things. So again, it's really interesting that all of the different pivot points here and all the different pressure points, we're going to see it play out. I expect Nolan Arenado to be with a different team by the start of spring training. At the same time, we might have some more action along these lines.
Ken, what is the likelihood that Alex Bregman stays in Houston, that they sign him to another deal in Houston? I know Scott Boras is his agent. It's obviously very slow going as far as Alex Bregman's new contract is concerned. Do you think he's back in Houston next season, or do you see him like you see Arenado with another club?
I see Alex Bregman leaving. The Houston Astros under Jim Crane have not been willing to give these monster contracts. They've been extremely successful. Do not get me wrong. But why did they trade Tucker? Because they don't want to go to the 300, 400, $500 million range next year when it's going to be a matter of him being a free agent and them having to ante up. Bregman, they've made an offer. It obviously was not sufficient. It was in the 150s. He wants more. I expect some team to give him more. It could be Toronto. It could be Boston. It could be the Yankees, although it seems to me the Yankees have made their big push with Fried and now Bellinger as far as a financial commitment is concerned. So I don't know exactly where Bregman's going to end up. Detroit is another possibility. Reunion with AJ Hinch.
Mm-hmm.
He seems to me, though, a guy that's going to be just fine. I mean, not in
All
Houston.
right. Yeah, it looks like the Astros and the Cardinals will continue to have those conversations, perhaps to see if Arenado is at Minute Maid Park, or now it's a new name, I know, but in Houston next season. And speaking of the Astros and the Cardinals, we have two brand new shows here on our Foul Territory platform. Katie Wu and Chandler Warham. Check out the Cardinal Territory and Crush City Territory on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Cardinal Territory's first episode is now out with Katie Wu and former Cardinals closer Trevor Rosenthal. No relation to our big friend Ken. Rome and Tyler Stafford break down the Astros' return in the Kyle Tucker trade on the latest Crush City episode. Welcome the newest shows to the Foul Territory family. Subscribe and rate 5 stars. Share every show in the Foul Territory network. All right, we move on now from Crush City Territory and Cardinals Territory to talk about the Mets. Also, Mets Up podcast is on the Foul Territory show as well, our platform as well. Let's talk about this Mets group, though, Ken. Do they need to add another piece to that starting rotation? When you think of the Mets, you now think of Juan Soto, but there's 25 other spots that need to be good enough to get into that postseason.
Alana, unequivocally, the answer is yes. And they added Griffin Canning last night. They've moved around the edges with their rotation the entire offseason. Signed Frankie Montas. Hasn't had a good run since the first half of 22. Signed Clay Holmes. Want to convert him from the bullpen to a starting rotation spot. These are all interesting moves, but they need one more guy and one more good starting pitcher. It could be Sean Manaea coming back. It could be Walker Buehler if he is someone the Mets identify, but it's really interesting to see how the Mets have gone about this. And let's look at where they are with their rotation right now. You see the top four: Senga, Montas, Peterson, and Holmes. Okay, not great. Then Blackburn, Canning, McGill, and Jose Buto. They are the depth guys who could fill in. David Stearns, both in Milwaukee and now in New York, has not been someone willing to go long-term with pitchers. That's why you're not hearing the Mets with Corbin Burns, though, of course, if Steve Cohen wants Corbin Burns, Steve Cohen will get Corbin Burns. But Stearns is not like to go in that direction. And, of course, last year, they were extremely successful with their short-term deals with Manaea and Luis Severino. It's tough to do that every year. It's tough to kind of hit the jackpot with these guys every year. But this is the way the Mets are going. They also have some prospects coming along. Is it a playoff caliber rotation as we sit here today? I would suggest the answer to that is no.
And I would also suggest, Ken, and you know more than I, that the Mets right now, not necessarily a playoff team. Forget a starting rotation that's playoff worthy. But you think about this. Lou Merloni brought up a good point. He said, the Mets signed Soto. Obviously, we know that. But they may lose Pete Alonso. They've already lost Sean Manaea and Severino. Of course, Severino now with the Athletics. Replace them, as you just mentioned, Ken, Montas, Holmes, and now Canning. Are they a playoff team? It's crazy because you think everybody was in, those that could be, on the Juan Soto sweepstakes, but just signing Juan Soto to that $765 million deal does not guarantee you're in the postseason. So they do have some work to do.
They do, and they recognize that. The offseason is not over. We're not even to Christmas yet. So the month of January is going to be a busy one. I would expect the Mets to continue to be active. Keep in mind, they also could make a trade. They could trade for Luis Castillo. They could trade for Dylan Cease. There are other possibilities out there. I don't know that they want to go in that direction, but that is an option for them. So I don't expect the Mets are done by any stretch of the imagination with their rotation and with filling out the rest of their roster as well. They know that with Soto, all right, you've got him at his prime, in his prime. They have to keep going. You can't just sign Juan Soto and say that's it. They know that. They knew that going into it.
All right, you talk about the New York Mets, but we also talk about the New York Yankees, of course. We also talked at the beginning of the show about how it's been relatively quiet this week, but Cody Bellinger is now a member of the New York Yankees. There was some talks, obviously, between the Chicago Cubs and Belly. They seem to have slowed, but they picked up again, Ken, because he's now number 35, his dad's Clay number, as far as the Bronx Bombers are concerned. What are the Yankees' next moves?
That, Alana, is a great question, and it's not necessarily clear. The most obvious move to me would be to sign a first baseman. There are
Yeah.
so many out there right now. It's Alonso, it's Walker, it's Carlos Santana, Goldschmidt. You can even go to Josh Bell and some others. But at the same time, if they don't sign a first baseman, Bellinger can play first. And if they do that, they'd have to obviously supplement their outfield. Maybe they can go in that direction. But it seems to me first base is the most obvious position to upgrade. And again, you do that, then you have the choice of Bellinger in center field or left field. It's not been determined yet, and it won't be determined until they fill out the rest of their roster. Center field is one spot, yes, for Bellinger. But Jason Dominguez, to this point, has looked better in center than he has in left. So maybe you're better off with Bellinger in left, Dominguez in center. You want to ease that kid's transition, make him as comfortable as possible as he continues to establish himself in the majors. Under any equation, Aaron Judge is going to be back in right field. And while he did fine in center, I know the metrics weren't good. He did fine. Did not embarrass himself by any stretch of the imagination. And if you want to talk about the play he missed in Game 5, he made an amazing catch innings before in Game 5. So it was fine, but for wear and tear purposes, you want him in right. You don't want him in center, continuing in his career as his age 32 season. No, 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 no. So that is going to be resolved by them, and they're going to put him back in right. It's just a matter of how they align the rest of their team. And frankly, they need another infielder as well, a second baseman or a third baseman, with Chisholm available to play either position.
So the Yankees' next move strongly depends on where they decide to play Bellinger, primarily as far as first base or center field or however that goes. What about a trade with the Texas Rangers, Ken, for Nathaniel Low at first?
That's another option at first base. Yes. And again, whatever they do, that's going to dictate Bellinger's position. But Nathaniel Low is a guy who is out there. Josh Naylor is a guy who is available in trade. I don't know that the Guardians will do it. They don't need to do it for payroll purposes after trading Jimenez. So there are numerous options at first base, many options at first base. So that to me would be the way to go. I forgot Anthony Rizzo. He's another one. If the Yankees wanted to re-sign him, I don't expect that they will. But with so many possibilities at first, it really looks like Bellinger will be in the outfield. And then, as I said, the question becomes center or left. Where do you want Dominguez? Ultimately, where do you think he will best succeed?
Yeah, it looks like a lot more questions as far as a third baseman versus first baseman. Many more first basemen out there than third baseman. All right, speaking of questions, time now for Grillin Ken. Get your questions in for Ken Rosenthal here on the live episode of Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal. And the first question is going to be about Nolan Arenado, Ken, who we started this entire show about. That's the biggest news right now. Of course, blocking that no trade to the Houston Astros. This comes from Seems Wild. Where does Nolan legit actually want to go besides the Dodgers? Now, obviously, you'd have to talk to Nolan himself to answer that question. He is from Southern California. He has mentioned in the past that he wanted to play in LA, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to go there.
I don't believe he's going to go there. And the Dodgers have Max Muncy at third. They have other things that they want to do in the bullpen this offseason. Nolan Arenado is not a priority for them. Now, the question that the person asks, where does he want to go? We don't know. We don't know if there's a list. We don't know which teams he is most interested in. But we can narrow it down to a team that will be a contender and a perennial contender. He has 3 years left on his deal. Again, he wants to win. So you can pretty much rule out some of these non-contending teams, even a team like the Angels near his Southern California home. I don't know that anyone views them as a contender. I don't think Nolan Arenado views them as a contender. So that would not be a possibility. But keep in mind, the teams that we ordinarily associate with perennial contention, Yankees, Red Sox, etc., those are the clubs.
Yeah, and it doesn't look like the Angels could pay him anyway because they're paying Anthony Rendon, who never plays at third base, $1 bazillion too. All right, next question is in regards to the Baltimore Orioles and Mike Elias. Is there any truth to the report that Mike Elias has been told to spend and he refuses to do so? I don't know that if an ownership group tells you to spend that you're going to go against what the ownership group wants. So what more can you tell us about this question from Deed Gobble too?
First off, this was a report. I'm not even sure the website. I never heard of the person who wrote it, which is not to dismiss it, but it was a one source story. They didn't go to Elias. They didn't do anything but talk to one source, and the source was unnamed. So I don't know how much stock to put into it. I would agree with you, Alanna. If ownership tells Mike Elias you have to spend, Mike Elias would be wise to spend. But my expectation or my belief here is that Elias is trying to operate this team as reflective of its market size, which is not that big. It's kind of a small market, Baltimore. And he doesn't want to extend on certain deals to put the owners in a bad spot where they're losing money, etc. I would assume they're all on the same page. Now, if this offseason doesn't go well for them and Mike Elias gets dismissed, well, then we might have something. But it seems to me that Elias is simply trying to operate judiciously. Now, that said, they need to do more. And I've been adamant about this. Tyler O'Neill, fine as a replacement for Santander. If he stays healthy, yes, adequate. Gary Sanchez, backup catcher, okay. Sugano, the pitcher they just signed, interesting addition. I wrote about him yesterday. They need top of the rotation guy. And they probably need a little bit more offense too. I don't know that they're going to be able to go get it. At some point, they have to fire. Now, they did that last year with Corbin Burns. They committed to a big trade for him. They traded two big prospects, Joey Ortiz and DL Hall, lost a draft pick in that trade as well. That's the kind of move that they need to make because their window will not be open forever. Gunnar Henderson under control for 4 more years. But while that's 4, once his salary starts to rise in year three and year 4, and you don't have him signed to an extension, which they probably won't because he's represented by Scott Boras, it becomes problematic. So they need to go. Their window, their time is now.
You mentioned Anthony Santander, and I know that he is no longer a Baltimore Oriole, but I'm also surprised, Ken, that he has not been picked up by somebody else quickly in this free agent market because this is a guy that had a heck of a year. Honestly, one of the best players throughout the 2024 regular season for the Orioles. Where do you think he ends up, and are you surprised he's still out there?
I wrote about this a little bit yesterday, Alanna. I'm not exactly surprised because there are some things with Anthony Santander that teams can point to and say, we don't like this. 307 career on base percentage, not great. Defense, not great in the outfield. Maybe he's better at first base. He would be another option for the Yankees at that spot if they wanted to pay him. And the other thing is his sprint speed is only in the 18th percentile. He's not very fast. So all of these things add up to some questions. At the same time, how many guys in this sport can hit 44 home runs in a season like Anthony Santander just did? So I still expect him to do well because power is at a premium. The Blue Jays have been one team that he has been linked to. I'm not sure exactly which other teams are in the mix, but I still expect him to do fairly well. Now, maybe not 125 million, 150 million. Maybe he's in the 80 to 100 range. I don't know. But he's still someone that is going to be valued by some club because of the power he brings.
Yeah, 44
also
home runs,
a great
right.
guy.
That's not easy to do. Yes, he is. He is a good guy. It'll be interesting to see where Anthony Santander ends up. Another question for you here, Ken, on Grillin Ken. This one in regards to Jurickson Profar. Graham Highlander wants to know, what do you think of where Profar might end up?
That's a guy we haven't talked a lot about, and he had an amazing season. Just incredible for the Padres. That was the season that we all expected to see from him regularly when he was a top prospect. The Padres would be the obvious spot. That is where he is most comfortable. They are under some financial restrictions now. And maybe if they trade Cease and do some other things, they can open it up, re-sign Jurickson Profar. The Royals at one point seemed like a really good fit, but they're kind of near their payroll limit. So I don't know the answer to that question, but he is a good player. Maybe not quite as good as he was last year on a consistent basis, but he was really good last year. So I don't know. Jurickson Profar is a name actually we haven't talked enough about, and I just don't know where the destination ultimately will be.
Another destination question for you, Ken, and this is in regards to Corbin Burns. Josh McGore wants to know, are the Red Sox still in on Corbin Burns?
Great question, Josh, and they should be. But John Henry, their owner, is not a fan of long-term contracts for starting pitchers. You can kind of understand that with what happened with David Price and then Chris Sale. Now they've got Crochet. They're going to be faced with a decision on him to sign him long-term. But Burns is going to be someone who I would imagine, I feel really comfortable saying this, is looking for more than Max Fried got, 218 over 8. Burns is quite accomplished, of course, durable, all of that. The Red Sox would be a perfect spot because they need still one more starting pitcher in my estimation, and in most people in the industry's estimation. But I just don't see John Henry going there. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he surprises us, but the Red Sox, for all their talk this offseason about doing more, they have yet to spend big. Crochet is a relatively inexpensive addition, so we're waiting to see where that money goes. Maybe it's Bregman, maybe it's Burns, maybe it's none of the above.
Yeah, our producer, Jeremy Meyer, agrees with you. They're big talkers, but not big spenders right now, Ken Rosenthal. All right, everybody, thank you so much for your questions. We appreciate it. Fair Territory continues after a word from AJ Pierzynski, Eric Kratz, and Scott Braun on Sawworth.
This holiday season, I want to give a gift to my loved ones that makes them feel special and unique. That gift is Storyworth.
Here's how it works. Each week, Storyworth emails your loved one a thought-provoking question that you get to help pick. Things like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? And what's the farthest you've ever traveled? All your loved one needs to do is respond with a story. Long or short, it doesn't matter. After that year of fun, Storyworth compiles those stories and photos into a beautiful keepsake hardcover book that you'll be able to share and revisit for generations to come. This is the perfect book to pass along at family gatherings or read with your kids. It is beautifully orchestrated by Storyworth, and that's why it has more than 35,000 five-star reviews on Trustpilot, with millions of stories preserved since they were founded over 10 years ago.
With Storyworth, I'm giving those I love most a thoughtful personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/foul and save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/foul to save $10 on your first purchase.
Dude.
All right, love this part of the show. It's where Ken and I give some accolades to somebody or some person or thing or organization that did something good. Ken, who is your dude of the week?
Yankees general manager Brian Cashman. Now, obviously, Brian Cashman has more money than most GMs. We all understand that. But the pivot from Soto so far has been Max Fried for $218 million, trade for Devin Williams, and now the trade for Cody Bellinger, in which they took on most of his salary. These are moves that will help the Yankees, and it showed that Cashman was ready if he lost Soto to do some other things, and he's acted quickly and decisively. Now, we talked about the Mets not necessarily being that much better of a team. The Yankees, keep in mind, they lost Soto, they lost Clay Holmes, they lost Nestor Cortez Jr. in the Williams trade. They've replaced those guys, but are they better? I'm not sure. They still need more offense. The only offensive addition is Bellinger. But all of that said, Cashman is not done yet. He is still going. And for pivoting so quickly and decisively, dude of the week.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the Yankees are going to be better this year than they were last year, if that's possible, even without the services of Juan Soto. My dude of the week is one of our own, Ken. It is Jason Kipnis, who does a great job with us on Foul Territory, who recently graduated from Arizona State University. He has a degree now in liberal studies. He's also opening up a restaurant in Miami, continuing to do a lot of great things. Congratulations to him. He made a promise to his mom that he was going to get his degree, and recently on Instagram, he also said he found that it meant a lot to him as well. So Jason Kipnis, congrats. You are a graduate, a college graduate. He is my dude of the week. Okay, time now for the John Fisher Dork of the Week. Go ahead, Ken. You have the honors.
All right. I just gave Cashman Dude of the Week, but I'm going to give the Yankees Dork of the Week for their ridiculous facial hair policy that continues in 2024 into 25. And I'm not saying this on behalf of Devin Williams, who is now going to have to shave his beard. But the Yankees only allow mustaches for the most part. It's what they've done for years. It's this Yankee thing. Come on. Let's advance the conversation a little bit. Let's let these guys have hair all over their faces and be a real team in that regard.
I love
They're
it.
a real team in many other regards.
I love it. Max Fried, a freshly shaven Max Fried. I was like, whoa. It's like, you don't even recognize these guys. But I will say this. I love the facts. He could have been my Dude of the Week also, in addition to Jason Kipnis, because Max Fried has a dog named Apollo. Apollo Fried. I mean, if that's not the funniest thing you've ever heard, I don't know what is. Okay, so for
also,
my
Max
dork
yesterday at his press conference was outstanding for those who might have seen it. Go ahead, Colin. I'm sorry.
He did a very nice job. I love the fact that the Yankees, Aaron Boone and Brian Cashman, brought Max's mom and wife or girlfriend, whatever, flowers. It's like, we care about families too. All right. So for my dork of the week, Ken, I know that you saw this because you see everything. Recently, there was a study that Major League Baseball did, and they released a 62-page report. It's almost like one of Scott Boris's reports on pitcher injuries that revealed an alarming increase in the amount of IL placements between spring training and opening day. And I don't know if you know this, Ken, but did you know it was because of velocity and stuff? That's why there's an increase in pitchers' injuries. Could you imagine? I don't know how much money they spent probably on this independent study to find out the cause of why so many folks are landing on the IL. But I'm not a Rhodes Scholar, not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I can tell you that I could have guessed it was stuff and velocity and trying to throw maximum effort on every pitch. What do you think?
Alanna, I'm totally with you. And you're absolutely right that this study, all it did was tell us what we already knew. However, to see it written and to see Major League Baseball acknowledge this problem in written form publicly, that is a necessary step. And for years, this problem has been not talked about enough. At least now there is some thought of, okay, this is an issue. We have to figure out ways to address it. There's been also talk of bringing back the starting pitcher, which would be one way to address this. If you don't have guys throwing 1,000,000 miles an hour because they're trying to get to 6 innings, 7 innings, yeah, that's the way to go. So from that perspective, I liked the report that it was out there, but I agree with you. We didn't exactly learn anything that revelatory.
Yeah, and I also do like the fact that Commissioner Manfred was saying, bringing back that starting pitcher, Ken, as you mentioned, because I remember when you used to look at the calendar and every fifth day you're like, all right, who's pitching? What's going on? And that's how you bought your ticket, because it used to be that the starting pitcher was the star of the show, if you will, obviously, that the day's game rests on that starting pitcher and that momentum. So it'll be interesting to see if that is actually the trend in which we go in our sport. All right, before we go, let's say hello to our friends at BetMGM. Let's shout them out. The BetMGM first bet $1,500 offer. When you use the bonus code FOUL, get this offer when you download the BetMGM Sportsbook app or at betmgm.com. Sign up, enter that bonus code FOUL, and deposit at least $10 into your new account. Place your first wager, receive up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if the bet loses. Now, if the bet does lose, your bonus bets will be available once your initial wager is settled. Gambling problem or concern, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Well, thank you, everybody, for watching here. Fair Territory with Ken Rosenthal, the live episode here on this Thursday. Foul Territory is next. Todd Frazier, Eric Kratz, Scott Braun, they're hosting. Katie Wu from Cardinals Territory, and of course, The Athletic and Evan Drellich join. Dodgers Territory follows with myself as well as Clint Pasillas. And Fair Territory with Ken is back on Monday. Have a great weekend, Kenny.
Thanks to you too, Alanna.